The evangelical pastor from North Carolina has been held for nearly 2 years over alleged links to political groups. The White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, said, "We believe he's a victim of unfair and unjust detention." Turkey has responded, though, and said that the US demands for Mr. Brunson's release are unacceptable, adding that it will respond to any hostility. The Turkish Foreign Ministry said in a statement, "We call on the US administration to row back from this wrong decision without delay. There will be a response to this aggressive attitude that will not serve any purpose." But Ms. Sanders said they've seen no evidence that Pastor Brunson has done anything wrong. She added that the two Turkish ministers had both played leading roles in the arrest of the US pastor, and as a result, any property or interest in property of both ministers within US jurisdiction is blocked, and US persons are generally prohibited from engaging in transactions with them. The press secretary also said that President Trump had discussed the matter with his Turkish counterpart, President Erdogan, multiple times. The US Treasury Department later said in a statement that Turkey's Justice Minister Abdülhamit Gül and Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu were targeted because they serve as leaders of Turkish government organisations responsible for implementing Turkey's serious human rights abuses. Due-Gundersen, Middle East cultural and political analyst, is surprised by the action on this Turkish ministry.
Well, to be honest with you, he's been living in Turkey for 23 years. So this does seem like it comes out of nowhere, but it's coming within the context of Erdogan going after exiles in exiles in the US in response to the failed coup attempt and the purge. And I believe that he's become a political pawn in this game.
Last week, President Trump warned Turkey it would face large sanctions if it did not release Mr. Brunson immediately. But it's unprecedented for the US to hit a NATO ally with sanctions such as these. And Mr. Due-Gundersen believes these sanctions pose an issue for NATO.
Well, this is certainly a problem because we have to look at the wider political consequences regarding the relationship between Trump and Erdogan. Turkey is a NATO ally, that's one, and also they are heavily involved in Syria at a time when Trump is considering withdrawing from Syria. And I know that Trump and Erdogan have been butting heads over the Kurdish diaspora in Syria and also the use of Kurdish militias by the US. So I think that there will be far-reaching political consequences no matter what happens, even if the swap goes ahead. Turkish-US relations are going to be further damaged.
Mr. Brunson is a long-term resident in Turkey. He's lived with his wife and 3 children while working as a pastor of the small Izmir Resurrection Church, which has a congregation of about 24. The authorities accuse him of having links to the outlawed Kurdish Workers' Party, or the PKK, and the Gulenist movement, which Turkey blames for the 2016 failed coup. The pastor has denied charges of espionage, but could face up to 35 years in jail if found guilty. He was moved to house arrest last month for health reasons, but US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said this was not enough. Turkey's foreign ministry said it had shared necessary information with the US, but insisted the case should be left with its judiciary. The New York Times reported that Mr. Brunson is one of 20 Americans who were charged after the coup 2 years ago. More than 5,000 people were arrested in Turkey when President Erdogan's huge post-coup crackdown. He blames Pennsylvania-based Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen for the attempt, but Mr. Gulen denies any involvement. And Mr. Due-Gundersen believes Gulen is the last obstacle for the Turkish president.
This is exactly what Erdogan wants. In fact, there have been rumors that he's wanting to have a swap for Andrew Brunson himself with Gulen. So it's obvious that this whole point here is that he wants to use Brunson as sort of a political hostage to get back his final opponent, who is Gulen, who is currently in the US. Well, I think this is really going to be up to Erdogan. Trump himself, up until recently, we have to remember that Trump was actually praising Erdogan. So Trump praised him during a White House visit and also congratulated him for his re-election. But I think right now what we're seeing is, especially after the coup, Erdogan wants to secure his position. And in his mind, the final opponent is Gulen, and so I don't think Erdogan's going to budge very easily.
Turkey wants the US to agree to his extradition, and President Erdogan has indicated he would swap the pastor for the priest. Jordan Brooks, Radio Sputnik.